From Wall Street to the White House, this is the Larry Kudlow Show.
Welcome back, folks. We welcome to the show two political pros, Joe Concha, Fox News contributor, and Roger Stone, longtime political consultant, Trump confidant, and host of WABC Radio's The Roger Stone Show, Sundays, 4 to 6 p.m. on many of these same stations. Gentlemen, welcome. Roger Stone, I begin with you, and I want to read a section of the speech, the Trump speech, toward the back end of the speech. We are Americans. Ambition is our heritage. Greatness is our birthright. And then he goes on to say, we are writing our own thrilling chapter of the American story. We can do it together. We will unite. We are going to come together, and success will bring us together, Roger. What do you make of that?
I thought it was an extraordinary moment. You know, I read the speech because CBS said it was meandering and so on. The speech reads very, very well.
Yes.
And I was in the hall. I thought Trump, he was somber. He was determined. There was a calmness about him, Larry, that I've known him 45 years. I've never really seen him like this. He's a different man in many ways. And he really does understand that God protected him, that God gave him the armor to survive this horrific attack. But the other favorite part of the speech was when he pointed out that the Trump tax cuts increased federal revenue every single year.
Yes.
The left continues to tell this lie. They told it about Reagan. Now they tell it about Trump. The tax cuts brought in more federal revenue, not less.
Yes.
I love that.
I love that, too. I love you for pointing it out. Joe Concha, I call it growthier. It was a growthier speech. In fact, the whole platform was growthier, along with the dramatic retelling of his assassination attempt and so forth, and how providential it was. But it really was a call to arms on the economy. Roger Stone's 100% right. And the supply side Laffer curve, yes, revenues went up even while tax rates went down. And there was something in there for everybody. But it was really a great call to arms, it seems to me. The success will unite theme. Success is the best revenge theme. Although he didn't use the word revenge, it wasn't necessary. Joe, I thought it was a masterful performance.
The whole week was masterful, quite frankly, Larry, Roger. You saw these speeches starting on Monday, and just from regular folks telling their stories or from Gold Star families talking about Afghanistan and Joe Biden's worst moment as president, obviously, and that's where everything turned. We remember August of 2021. And then, Roger used the word before, there was a calmness to Trump. Yeah, the word I wrote down in all my notes while I was there was he was just so relaxed, right? I mean, at one point he has his granddaughter on his lap watching this speech. He had a smile to him, an appreciation maybe for everything. He's been to two conventions before as the nominee, but this one obviously came 5 days after he came within a millimeter of losing his life. So I think what we're going to see now from polls, guys, is your usual post-convention bounce, but at the same time, juxtapose that with the Democrats a few weeks from now, where Chicago will basically become Gaza outside the United Center. And inside there'll be chaos as well, because we may not know who the nominee is. They may go open convention, and they may install two candidates when they've talked about all these years how they're the ones who are going to save democracy. So then they go full Soviet and then just say, all right, we're going to pick two from the elites in our party, and here's your new Democratic ticket. So I know you called Roger a political consultant, by the way. I think you have to add a fashion consultant to that as well, because I saw that guy at the convention surrounded by people constantly taking pictures. And boy, Roger, I don't know where you get your suits, but pass it along to me when we get off this call, because you got it, my man.
I want to talk about the Democrats in a minute, but actually, parenthetically, Roger, am I still on your best dressed list? I want to make sure I stay there.
You're in the emeritus list.
Oh, that's right.
You have a permanent status in the Hall of Honor.
Roger.
But by the way, Joe had a necktie on Fox the other night. I even texted him. It was amazing. Red, white, and blue tie. I loved it.
Joe Concha is the best of the best also.
Thank you. $12 from Cheap Ties on Amazon. But it looks good, so that's all I care about.
Oh, no. Roger, going back to 2015, when Mr. Trump finally declared in the summer of 2015, my point here is it wasn't really his party. So much of the Republican Party was against him when he ran. He won anyway. During his presidency, during his first term, so much of the Republican Party was against him. I mean, Raj, even when I was in there as NEC director for 3 years, so many Republican senators were against him. And, of course, in the recent years, so many in the party turned against him. But now, and this is where I'm going, it's Donald Trump's Republican Party. It was Donald Trump's Republican convention. And if he wins, it's going to be completely Donald Trump in the Senate and the House, and he may well have coattails. That's different than it was several years ago. It is a new Republican Party, do you think?
Yes, there's no question about that. Look, first of all, let's define what the Republican Party is. I argue that the Republican Party are the voters at the grassroots level in all 50 states who vote Republican, not the leaders in Washington, not the party leaders, not some of those who have been there, frankly, too long. So at the leadership level of the party, yes, there was resistance to the America First agenda. There was resistance to Trump's opposition to more and more endless foreign war. But make no mistake about it. We are no longer the party of Wall Street. We are no longer the party of the country clubs. We are no longer the party of the wealthy elite. We are a party of working class people. We are the middle class party. We're the party of economic aspiration and economic growth. The party has changed entirely, and we are never going back. This will never go back to being an elitist party. Trump has transformed the party, but more than that, like in 1932 with the Democrats, like in 1968 with the Republicans, we're having a complete realignment of the parties. We are seeing more at this convention. I've been to every convention since 1964. I was 12 years old when my parents let me go to the Goldwater Convention at Cow Palace in San Francisco because our next door neighbor was the Republican National Committee woman, and I drove across the country. This convention was different. More black faces, more Hispanic faces, more Asians, far, far, far more young people. Larry, it's a dynamic new party of the middle class.
Yes, I like that. I agree with that completely. It's a working folks party. And Joe Concha, J.D. Vance made a direct appeal to working folks. I mean, that was the thrust of his speech.
And not just some phony throwing out platitudes as if he could connect to them, right? The way Joe Biden does, how he portrays himself as Scranton Joe and then runs off to Lake Tahoe or St. Croix or Nantucket and stays in $40 million mansions, right? That's the thing. J.D. Vance's story is many people's story, particularly in states like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan. And I think it was just a genius stroke by Donald Trump to select this man as his vice president to pass the torch on to the next generation. And to Roger's point, it's the populist party now, right? It's the party of the working class, the party that Democrats used to say they were. I always love this stat, and it's worth sharing again. The 10 richest congressional districts in this country are all represented by Democrats. They're the party of the elites. And if you put Kamala Harris to the top of this ticket, guys, you tell me how she's going to connect when she goes to Pennsylvania and meets with steel workers and talk to those folks, or auto workers in Michigan, farmers in Wisconsin. You put her on this ticket, and things actually, if this is somehow possible, may get even worse for the Democrats in November.
Roger, your critique of J.D. Vance, I mean, I'm just going to guess he's going to spend a lot of time in the Great Lakes region for those industrial states talking to the working men and women, blacks, browns, whites, young. That's going to be his role. Is that what's going to happen here?
Well, as you know, Larry, it used to be true that the presidential candidate remained above the fray, and the vice presidential candidate was the one who carried the partisan load and attacked the Democrats. Trump is his own attack dog. He has no problem taking the Democrats on. So it's a slightly different role, but I'm very happy with J.D. Vance's selection because, first of all, he's not a neocon. party balancing thing where we take people on the ticket who really don't support the president's agenda or the presidential candidate's agenda. Those days are over. I think he has a very compelling personal story. I mean, this guy comes from nothing. He's self-made. He's an entrepreneur. He has got a clear understanding of high tech and that industry, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency. These things are important to young voters. He's 39 years old, the exact same age that Richard Nixon was when he joined the ticket with Dwight Eisenhower.
That's an interesting point. I hadn't thought about that. I mean, I knew he was 39, but I forgot about that. But I thought, you have a history with Nixon, Roger Stone. You have a history with Nixon.
Well, as we both know, his single greatest mistake, closing the gold window. Other than that,
yes.
he was one of the greatest presidents in American history.
You know, another point on J.D. Vance, Joe Concha, is plugged into the Silicon Valley, Peter Thiel and Elon Musk. And I will reiterate another point we've talked about. Musk and his syndicate ponying up $45 million a month for the Get Out the Vote, mail-in balloting, harvesting, in order to fight Zuckerbucks in all the key counties in the swing states. Whoops. Anyway, Joe, if you're still with us,
I am.
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting thing. You've got these Silicon Valley entrepreneurs, Vance, Thiel, Musk, have come around to Trump's way of thinking. They are venture capitalists, but the second word in that phrase is capitalist, so they're going to be for growth, but they're also ponying up a lot of money to do what Republicans didn't do in 2020 and 2022, which is stop the Zuckerbucks. Now, to get out the vote, the ground game's going to be much stronger, I think. You tell me, Joe Concha.
Well, speaking of Mark Zuckerberg, he did an interview yesterday where he's called Donald Trump a badass for what happened at the near assassination attempt. So maybe the Zuckerbucks are coming around. Who knows? We know that Elon Musk is donating millions upon millions to the Trump campaign. But I'm glad the conversations come back to this in general in terms of economy, in terms of capitalism, because the focus over the last three and a half weeks since the debate has been all about Joe Biden, all about his mental fitness. Will he drop out? Who will replace him? Will Obama come forward and say Joe has to go? All these things, and the issues have kind of gone away, it almost feels like, because we're talking about Biden strictly from a mental perspective, but we got to look at the economic record that we're seeing here. Joe Biden continues to say that he inherited 9% inflation. He did not. We obviously have seen that wages have not kept up with inflation. We've seen everything in terms of energy that you guys talked about before, the stopping of the expansion of the Keystone Pipeline, for example. Drill, baby, drill will be coming back. So, yeah, I'm glad now. Hopefully, once the Democrats figure out who their nominee is, it gets back to the issues, because no matter what you do in replacing Joe Biden, it's still the Democratic brand on inflation, on crime, on the border, on immigration, on foreign. And on things like men competing against women in sports. So let's bring it back to the issues, and if that's the case, then Donald Trump wins, and he wins big.
And Roger, before we take a break, last 30, 40 seconds, the lawfare attack on Trump has completely broken down. I mean, Jack Smith now he's been discredited as the special counsel. It's all broken.
Look, his appointment was always unconstitutional. He was never confirmed by the U.S. Senate to have these sweeping powers. There is no provision in law for his appointment. This argument was actually raised against Mueller in my own phony prosecution when they tried to frame me and pressure me into testifying against Trump. It was always right. It was just heard in the wrong venue. And once it got in front of Judge Cannon, who, by the way, is an honest, respected judge and a tough prosecutor, they're trying to discredit her now. It's all falling away. This is the hand of God. There is no question about that.
Yes.
All of these obstacles that just 18 months ago seemed impossible are falling away one by one.
Yeah.
It is clearly an act of the Lord.
Yes, terrific stuff. Joe Concha, Roger Stone, I'm Kudlow. We'll be right back after this brief message.
Larry Kudlow. From Wall Street to the White House, this is the Larry Kudlow Show.
Welcome back, folks. We're talking to Joe Concha, Fox News contributor, and Roger Stone, host of WABC Radio's The Roger Stone Show, Sundays 4 to 6 p.m. on many of these same stations. Joe Concha, I don't really understand the Democratic Party. So I'm reading on the Fox News digital website, Biden, here's one headline, Biden is still affirming his 2024 bid, but then I'm reading the DNC is going to have a virtual roll call in early August, so that doesn't change. But then again, Pelosi is saying, don't believe Kamala if Biden quits, and I don't know, a third of the party is in full revolt. So I don't understand what's going on here. Is he alive? Is Biden alive as a candidate? Is he dead as a candidate? What's happening?
I think Democrats want him not alive as a candidate, but more people have to come forward. I mean, this passive aggressiveness by the Obamas, for example, or by Nancy Pelosi. If you want him out, just show some brass and come forward and say he's got to go. Don't hide behind George Clooney if you're Obama, right? And if you're Nancy Pelosi, don't send out Adam Schiff to say he has to drop out. You want him out, get him out. But I think they fear maybe that Kamala, like I was talking about before, may be worse, as the candidate. And so they don't have that good option. And to your point, I mean, we're talking early August when that roll call happens. Guys, it's July 20th today? I mean, the runway is getting really short, and that's a lot of things that have to move and change. But in the end, I do think it's Kamala Harris only because of the war chest. $85 million that can't be transferred to any other candidate. That is a ton of money when Donald Trump's already outraising the party, that you can't just start from scratch with two candidates and say, okay, let's go. Again, they're wrong on the issues, and this is a party in complete and total chaos right now.
Roger Stone, is Obama pulling the strings? And is a lot of this just they're settling up for a golden parachute for Joe Biden?
There's no question that Barack Obama is the guy orchestrating the effort to give Joe Biden the hook. Well, we have to remember the famous quote in which Obama said, never underestimate Joe Biden's ability to F things up. There's never been a high regard there for Joe, on the other hand, because I used to work for Senator Arlen Specter in the Senate and then work for Senator Dole. I've seen Joe Biden up front. He was always a pompous blowhard with a much higher opinion of himself than, any other senator had of him. He's very, very stubborn. In his mind, he's a Kennedy. He really thinks he's something special. Going to be very hard to get him to go. But at this point, I think the keys are Schumer, Jeffries, which is really Pelosi, and she showed her hand through the Schiff statement this week. I still believe he will go. It's only a matter of time. He's hanging on by a thread. Then they have a hard time passing up Kamala because under any normal political scenario would be her turn, sitting vice president. That's why they're talking about the open convention. It's a way to, small d, democratically dump her because they know she's a loser as well. I say that these kids are greased for Joe Biden. I still believe in the end. I've been saying this for 3 years. Glad to see Vivek Ramaswamy kind of grab onto it. I do not believe he will be the nominee. Somebody else will. I'm not even sure it will be Kamala at this point. But Joe Concha makes a great point about the money. The money's not transferable to anybody other than Kamala because it was raised under the Biden-Harris ticket aegis.
But, Joe, Kamala has never had – she failed miserably. If you go back to the Democratic debates and primaries in 2020 – nobody liked her. I think an open convention puts up somebody else. I don't know whether it's Newsom or Whitmer or Josh Shapiro or who else. An open convention, I think, gets rid of Joe Biden and it gets rid of Kamala Harris also.
You're right about that in that case. Oh, sorry, Roger. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, yeah. Larry's right about that because Kamala Harris, we all remember, didn't even get to 2020 as a 2020 candidate. She dropped out in December 2019 and then had the audacity to say that, well, it was racism and sexism is the reason why I wasn't elected. Boy, that's one hell of a way to talk about Democratic voters, Kamala. But, yeah, well done. So, yeah, she has an authenticity problem. She gets an F- at the border. And when she speaks, she's like Biden in the sense where there's a part of her brain that's broken. You take her outside of a teleprompter, and, boy, just please stay on as Vice President Kamala Harris until August 12th so I can see J.D. Vance versus you in a debate, because that would be the greatest entertainment ever. I'd pay like a good $500 to see that on pay-per-view. No question.
10 seconds. 10 seconds, Roger Stone. Does it matter with respect to Trump who the Democratic candidate is?
I think it actually does. They're audacious enough to try to distance themselves from the current record of Joe Biden. Is another reason why they need to dump it. But Willie Brown is a great friend of mine. We have sartorial interests in common. He says she's smarter than we think. We shall see.